Tuesday, August 11th. It is 6 o'clock, and I will call this Lacey City Council work session to order. For the record, we have, I believe Councilmember Greenstein is online, or is he?
Not yet.
Not yet. The mayor is absent. He is excused. We may see Council Greenstein in a moment. And I'll read our land acknowledgement. We, the city of Lacey, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian tribe and the Squaxin Island tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. And with that, can I get a motion for tonight's agenda?
I move approval of tonight's agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of said motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. We have an agenda. And the first item on tonight's agenda is public comment. It looks like we have one person who signed up for public comment tonight, Michael Howard. Mr. Howard, if you'd like to go to the podium, please state your name, the city that you live in, and you'll have 3 minutes for comment.
Thank you. Michael Howard. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Williams Kastner in Seattle. I'm here as one of the representatives for Waste Connections, and I'd be happy to reserve my remarks for that agenda item if you prefer, but otherwise I'll just continue within my 3 minutes here. I'm privileged as someone who grew up in Lacey, went through K through 12 in the city, to speak before my hometown city council and to be representing Waste Connections, including its subsidiary LeMay. And LeMay, as I learned today, has been serving the city of Lacey for since 1942, actually. And I think the important thing from the company's perspective is that the decision before the city council of whether to continue under UTC jurisdiction or to select a franchise or execute a contract with a company, that this is the city's decision to make. The company's here to be the city's partner and to provide information and support in that decision. I found the company reviewed staff's materials for today's agenda and found them well researched, and I would only have a few minor clarifying points I might raise here. The first major point I might raise here is that the rates for solid waste collection services are likely to increase for Washington residents over the near future for a number of reasons. And the staff materials noted the Recycling Reform Act, which is a very significant new law, where the costs of recycling products and landfilling products is going to be baked into the cost of that product, and that's going to increase solid waste rates throughout the state. Some other factors that are going to be increasing rates across the board would be the organics management laws that are going to be requiring mandatory organic collection first for businesses and then for residential customers. Tip fees. The Thurston County tip fees for disposing of waste, there's going to be a 13.5% increase this year and another 13.5% increase next year. And then there's always the rising cost of fuel, which is a major cost item. The next main point I'd like to just address briefly here is that these rates are all based on cost of service based accounting, and the company's books are transparent to the UTC. They can be inspected by the state agency, and they would be transparent to the city as well if the city chose a franchise or contract. And finally, I'd like to just very briefly touch on what regulation under the UTC right now, the Utilities and Transportation Commission for a Solid Waste Company, looks like. The UTC very closely scrutinizes any request for rate increases, and in recent years, a company such as Waste Connections would actually face scrutiny not only from UTC staff, the enforcement staff, but also public counsel, which is a separate office of the Attorney General's. So they're facing scrutiny from two different offices in the Attorney General's, and they can investigate the company's books. So there's a quite thorough process, but we'd welcome any questions during the, after, on that agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next on our agenda, we have a briefing for the Lacey Veteran Services Hub strategic plan. Brian.
There we go.
We're on in. We're on in.
Good evening. I'm waiting for the slides to come up here. Deputy Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to present the Lacey Veteran Service Hub operations update, as well as the strategic plan. Does this take next slide? Here's our agenda for the operations update. So for service overviews, the only two updates from the last time I briefed you is under legal assistance. We now work with the VA Veterans Justice Outreach Program, which is a program that the VA has to help veterans that are dealing with criminal legal issues. And then under employment, we recently worked with St. Martin's University and brought on their Washington Vets to Tech program, which is a program they have that helps transitioning service members, their family members, and then veterans get into the IT profession. Pending any questions or feedback, there's no other updates for that slide. So for the client summary, for calendar year 25, we had 3,317 clients that came into the Lacey Veteran Service Hub for services. So far in calendar year 26, we've had 1,573 clients come to use our program. For calendar year 25, we had 975 clients that were new clients. That's 29%. So far this year, we've had 667 of our clients are brand new. That's a significant increase to 43%. Moving down to transportation, in calendar year 25, we transported 269 clients, just over 9,700 miles, which averages to just above 37 miles per trip. So far this year, we've taken 165 clients to over 7,700 miles, averaging about 46 miles per trip. Moving down to the VSO appointments, we started our online scheduling in October 13th of 2025, and since then, we've helped 1,337 veterans file their VA claim. That's an average of almost 7 clients per day. Moving down to housing support, we conduct that weekly veteran housing options group every Thursday. Calendar year 25, we helped 198 clients receive housing support, and so far this year, we've helped 90. Under financial assistance, this is a Thurston County Veterans Assistance Fund stat. They helped 93 clients last year, totaling over $244,000 of financial assistance to veterans in Thurston County. And then calendar year 26, they've helped 71 clients with over $164,000 of financial support. And then lastly, with our partnership with Thurston County Food Bank, we've helped 118 community members receive assistance through our program as a satellite location for the food bank.
So has American Lake been taking less appointments? Is that why there's an increase in miles per trip headed up to Seattle, or?
So you're talking VA
The miles per trip on the client transports.
It's attributed to the fact that we have clients at further locations. We're picking up people out in Rainier now. We're picking up a lot of people out in Yelm, and they're routinely using the service over and over again. So the same clients are using the service quite a bit for a lot further distance. Yep. Pending any other questions or feedback, we'll move on to the next slide. So this is our client locator data. For this slide, we combine calendar years 25 and 26. The total number of clients, when you combine both those years that we've seen, is 4,890. Of that, we're able to accurately locate 4,839, which is almost 99%. And if you look to the far right there, that's almost a 34% increase from the last time I briefed you in February when you were down at the vet center, the vet hub. Washington State has 4,821 of those clients, which is just over 99%, and then Thurston County makes up 96.1% of them. For the local area, the city of Lacey has 1,286 clients that have come through our door when you combine those 2 years, and that's just over 26%. And the city of Olympia has just under 18% of our clients come from the city of Olympia, with the rest of the region kind of filling in the rest of those gaps. Pending any questions, we'll move on to the next slide. So for operational updates, we have 17 policies, 7 SOPs established, and we have a Lacey Veteran Service Hub handbook that we put into place that helps onboarding of our our volunteers and our providers. We've developed 9 step-by-step guides that help veterans and families navigate VA. Those guides are anything from what to do following the loss of a veteran, what our VHOG actually is and what providers are there, home modification that's available through VA and the process to request it, along with education assistance. What we saw is the same questions coming up again and again from clients, and instead of just having to research it every time, we developed guides that we can hand out to them, we can email them, they can go to our website and pull it down, and they're useful tools that we created to help the veterans navigate VA. It's not anything VA has in place. So under media and advertisement, we established our Facebook page. We've updated our website. Highly recommend you take a look at it. It's much more modern and cleaned up. The brochure and volunteer flyers have been updated and modernized. We had a magazine article that we published in the JBLM Ranger and Airlifter magazine for calendar year 26, and we're finalizing an advertisement with that same magazine for calendar year 27. So the Lacey Veteran Service Hub will have an actual advertisement in that, so we'll reach out to the JBLM community. And then lastly, we put together a volunteer driver recruitment campaign video that we shared via social media and on the city website to increase the number of transportation specialists we have. We currently have 14 transportation specialists that are volunteers that conduct all of our drives for clients. Under data accuracy, we developed a unique ID for each client. We cleaned up the location data. As you saw on the previous slide, we can now accurately locate 99% of our clients. And then we streamlined our intake and daily sign-in process, which was cumbersome and created a lot of concerns for the clients that were coming in. We continually work with the JBLM Sergeants Major Association to make sure that the Lacey Gold Star Memorial stays cleaned. Under shared space agreements, all providers now have signed shared space agreements or MOUs signed for use of our facility. Moving over to outreach program, we currently have 4 volunteers that are trained as outreach specialists, and them as well as myself have participated in 17 outreach events across the region since I came on board last July. Moving down to projects, we're finalizing the ADA van wrap. You'll see that in a couple slides from now what the concept is. The elevator lift, the construction started last Friday with the exterior construction project beginning, and there was actually concrete being laid today when I left the facility to come here. You'll get an update on the strategic plan here on the second half of this brief. We're working with an SPSCC student on a veteran-focused art project for inside the Lacey Veteran Service Hub. We're going to use a space in there where the student's going to put the art project up. And then we'll have a CCTV installation down at the Lacey Veteran Service Hub. Pending any questions on operational updates, we'll move on to the next slide.
Real quick, so I'm grateful and happy about the elevator coming and being put in. Like, what right now, like people who can't, walk in there, what is our procedure for that?
We have the ramp to downstairs and we have the ramp to upstairs. So right now, we've got to take them all the way around. That's right, sir. Yeah, so right now, I normally escort them. Like, good example is for the VHOG, they'll come downstairs, they'll do an intake, and then we take them upstairs. If that client can't get downstairs for the VHOG, we'll meet them upstairs, and then we'll do the intake right there on site to kind of work with them. But yeah, so that's the current process right now without the lift in place.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Who would you say in our service area is the least likely to come and get services? Is there a demographic that we're just not reaching?
So we have 19.4% of our population is 65 and older. So the word is getting out for a veteran to the community that the services are available. I couldn't pinpoint one specific demographic that is not using our services. As you can see, based on our new client intake from this year, we're up 43%. So we have a significant, the word's getting out about our program and what the city of Lacey has for veterans across the South Sound region.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So for volunteer updates, for calendar year '25, we had 22 volunteers that provided just over 3,200 hours of service to the program. And this year, we have 31. That number as of today is 34 volunteers that have provided over 2,300, almost 2,400 hours of service to the community. The roles our volunteers support are outreach specialists, transportation specialists, and front desk specialists. They're the face and the foundation of our program. Without them, we can't do what we do. So a couple events that the Lacey Veteran Service Hub has hosted over the last couple months. In June, we conducted annual first aid training with our volunteers in the community room. In May, we worked with the Sergeants Major Association to conduct Gold Star Memorial cleanup just before the Memorial Day weekend. And then in February, Hire Heroes USA conducted a career workshop where a lot of active duty, most of those are active duty, transition into the civilian world, came to the program. Hire Heroes USA does an event there every 90 days. Pending any questions?
Is that like an agreement that you worked out with them? Like you wouldn't-
Correct. Yep,
Okay.
it's a recurring event that we worked out with that organization. They're a nonprofit, and every 90 days they come in, and they've done them specific for spouses. They've done employment for veteran spouses or active duty spouses that are looking for employment. They've done for transitioning service members. They've done it on veterans. They help with resume building, job searching. It's a pretty good program. It lasts about 3 hours per event.
Awesome.
So here's the Lacey Veteran Service Hub van wrap, current design as it's still being finalized. But the concept's being developed by Design Automotive Concepts. It's a veteran-owned business out of Olympia. The important thing to note here is this design closely matches our brochure. So that way, when somebody sees it on the streets, they can align it directly to our program through our brochure.
I really like the Let's Connect brand there.
Pending any questions, that completes the first half in just the operations update. With your permission, we can move on to the strategic plans and whatever my boss has.
Brian, if I could just jump in for a second. I just want to highlight, I know Brian, last time he came here, he was at the hub maybe for a handful of weeks, maybe a month plus.
Yeah, put me on the spot.
And Brian's now been there, and as you can see, Brian has done just a phenomenal job of putting in new practices, new policies, doing additional outreach, getting more volunteers, getting new folks to the hub, getting new folks connected to services. And I think, we look at the long list of operational updates that Brian's been working on, and that has taken a lot of hard work and dedication to supporting our veterans and our active duty service members and their family. So I just want to highlight the phenomenal work that Brian's been doing at the Lacey Veteran Services Hub.
Thank you, Shannon, I appreciate that. So here's our agenda for the strategic plan. We're going to discuss the strategic context. We're going to look at the planning process. We're going to discuss our vision. We're going to look at the strategic plan at a glance, how we intend to measure success, what our implementation roadmap is going to be. We'll look at the proposed city council message, at least a snapshot of it, and then we'll go through council consideration, next steps, and then discussion, feedback, and questions at the end. So for strategic context, we needed to understand the environment that would shape the future of the Lacey Veteran Service Hub. So we did this in 4 areas. First was we looked at growing regional demand. We knew that demand for our services would continue to grow as the military-connected community evolves and services become more complex. Next, we knew that our role's been expanding in the region. So the Lacey Veteran Service Hub has grown from a local resource into a regional center that serves veterans, active duty service members, and their families throughout Thurston County and the South Puget Sound region. It gave us an opportunity to look at organizational growth, which we knew would require sustainable funding, expanding our partnerships, developing our volunteer program, and modernizing our system to continue to support the services that we want to provide. And lastly, we saw this as a strategic opportunity to develop a plan that provides a roadmap to strengthen organizational capacity, enhance regional collaboration, and position the Lacey Veteran Service Hub for the future of our program. Pending any questions, we'll go on to the next portion. So during the planning process, we wanted to make sure that this was a data-informed roadmap for the future of the Lacey Veteran Service Hub. We did this through 4 areas. First, we conducted an environmental scan where we assessed the regional demographics and our service trends. Then we evaluated our current operations, our demand, and our future needs. Once that was complete, we conducted a SWOT analysis where we identified strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then we also evaluated our organizational readiness and the future priorities that we wanted. Once that was complete, we moved on to stakeholder engagement where we gathered feedback from veterans, military families, volunteers, service providers, and community partners. We also reviewed community input received through the city's Commission on Equity. And then lastly, we created our strategic direction. We developed strategic goals, objectives, implementation strategies, and performance measures that helped us align our priorities. The bottom line is the proposed strategic plan reflects data analysis, organizational assessment, and stakeholder input to guide the future of the Lacey Veteran Service Hub. Penny, any questions or feedback? So moving on to our vision, we knew that we needed to develop the foundation of our program, which meant we needed to define the organization's long-term direction. Our vision describes what the future of the program needs to be. And in our eyes, that's a centralized, comprehensive support location for veterans, active duty service members, and their families. Our mission reminds us of why we exist, honoring service and supporting veterans. Our core values guide how we carry out that mission. And our end state defines what success looks like. We see success as the Lacey Veteran Service Hub becoming a fully sustainable, regionally supported, digitally innovative, and recognized center of excellence for veterans, active duty service members, and their families. The hub will be viewed as a model for regional collaboration, military-civilian partnerships, community volunteerism, and efficient access to support services. Penny, any feedback or questions? So the strategic plan at a glance brings together everything we've discussed and translates it into 5 strategic priorities. The priorities work together to strengthen every part of the organization. We begin with sustainability, then we move on to our people, then we expand our partnerships, improve our operations, and lastly, we strengthen our military collaboration. Together, they support day-to-day operations and ensure long-term growth. Progress in one area helps strengthen the other. Pending any questions or feedback, we'll move on to how we intend to measure success. So how do we measure success? We look at strategic objectives. Each goal needs to include specific objectives that define what the Lacey Veteran Service Hub intends to accomplish. This helps provide clear goals and allows us to focus our work and attention. Under performance indicators, we developed KPIs that allow us to measure outcomes and track progress over time. Some things that we would measure are volunteer growth, outreach events, client services, transportation utilization, and grant funding. Under annual performance review, we intend to make this progress will be evaluated annually to assess results, celebrate our successes, and adjust strategies as needed. Our intent is that the plan adapts to our community. Pending any questions, we'll move on to the implementation roadmap.
I have a real quick comment. So in reading your SWOT, I saw that you were going to be, aggressively going after more volunteer and a greater volunteer base, which I thought was great. And then also you said in there strengthening the relationship with the base. In some cases, soldiers, active duty soldiers are coming, have come and helped do things like even picking up trash. So I've seen, I don't know exactly what the program is or how it works. Are you familiar with the program where they send young active duty soldiers to do city work or community work?
There's a couple different programs that they have on Joint Base Lewis McChord. There's Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers, which is a community volunteer program of soldiers that live in the barracks and airmen that they try to get out in the community to do community events. That could be one of the programs. Joint Base Lewis McChord also has the volunteer, it's called the Installation Volunteer Corps. That could be another one of the programs that are helping support those community events. The Sergeants Major Association is a volunteer organization on the base. That's another one that does community events. They're a nonprofit, but that's another organization. They have the Warrant Officers Association. There's quite a bit on the installation that helps support community events.
Okay.
So for our implementation roadmap, the next 5 slides will break each strategic goal down into objectives, actions, timelines, and how we measure successes. The roadmap turns the strategic plan from vision into an implementation plan, and it's phased over 5 years in order to remain flexible and realistic. For Goal 1, sustainability, we identified 3 objectives that we thought would support that goal. Explore and establish shared funding agreements, submit at least 2 grants annually, and establish a donor engagement strategy. With each one of these goals, there are strategies, a realistic timeline, and KPIs that are going to help us maintain our glide path. Pending any questions or feedback, we'll move on to goal number 2.
Do you have a target for the amount of grants that you want to receive?
So no set limit, like high limit, but the program, I think 2 would be reasonable for us to be able to manage. We have 1 currently, which is through Thurston County for the van grant. But are you talking financial
I'm
number?
talking about dollar amounts. Are you
No,
looking to? Oh, okay.
yeah, no, we would owe you that number, but I think it just based on what service at the time we need. And it,
Okay.
I think,
And are these-
Councilmember Turner, just to follow up on what Brian was saying, I think one of the things we want to do with the first step is to really understand what kind of grant opportunities are out there that match where we are as an organization. And so that could change, on a year-to-year basis, depending on what our needs are, whether, it's adding additional folks to be there, adding additional vans as we phase out vans. So part of that question is it really is dependent on the needs every year and what could be a possibility.
No, that helps. I didn't know if you were looking for a total of $100,000, $10,000, what. So that helps. Thank you.
And are these grant sources, are the grant sources federal at all, or federal, state, and local,
So
or?
there's a bunch of different grants available. Thurston County's got their Veteran Assistance RFP one that recently came out. Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs, so state level, has what's called the VA Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox Suicide Prevention Program, so that may be something we want to look at in the future as a need that we need to bring into the Lacey Veteran Service Hub. I have a list here of other grants that are available, and that's just a quick snapshot. There are federal grants that are also available for veteran programs as well, but yes. So under goal number 2, which is our volunteer corps, some of this we've already actively been doing, but one of the main things we want to do is develop and launch the Lacey Veteran Service Hub Academy to professionalize the training of our volunteers as they come in. We also want to continually to increase our volunteer pool and implement a volunteer recognition and retention framework. Just like all the previous goals, there's strategies, a realistic timeline, and KPIs associated with it to make sure we stay on target. Pending any questions?
Is there an ideal volunteer?
I'm sorry,
Is there an ideal volunteer?
like a number or?
No, like a person.
No, I mean,
You know what I mean? Like ex-military?
we have
ex-
military, we have veterans, we have an active duty spouse down there right now. We have people who have no military connection whatsoever. No, I don't, it's just somebody who's willing to support the program.
Okay, and I only ask this for the benefit of the public who might be watching.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate for that clarification. Yeah, just anybody who's willing to support the program and live up to our core values, that will 100% be appreciated down at the vet hub.
Brian, if I could too, do you mind just going into a little bit more detail of the 3 positions you have for volunteers and what their jobs would do?
Sure. Yeah, so we have the front desk specialist, which is the heart and beat of our day-to-day operations. They're the first person that veterans and their families see when they come through the door. They have to triage every single client that comes in and figure out what resources best suits their situation. Then we have the transportation specialists who, have put in already 7,700 miles this year, who will go out to a veteran, active duty service member or family member's location, pick them up anywhere in Thurston County, take them to any medical appointment in Thurston County and up to American Lake VA. And then lastly, we have the outreach specialists who are our external face outside the actual physical facility of the hub at community events that help sell our program to a broader range of the community.
Okay.
So for goal number 3, which is community awareness, we want to continually increase our outreach events. We want to increase our higher education partnerships. Currently, we have 4. We want to also develop a marketing campaign. Just like the previous goals, we have we have strategies, a timeline, and KPIs associated with this. And a lot of this will be accomplished through outreach events, direct contact with some of the local universities. Any questions or feedback? So for goal number 3, which is our modernization of our systems, we want to implement an enhanced client appointment system, which was important. If you remember during the update brief, I talked about every client now has a unique ID. That was step 1 in getting to this eventually, this objective. We need to enhance our intake process. Right now, it's all done through Smartsheet, and then expand our ADA transportation scheduling capacity. We now have that ADA van. The drivers are all going through training currently, myself included, so we'll have 5 total drivers able to go pick up clients and take them for ADA appointments. So just continually selling that program and expanding on it. Just like the previous goals, we have strategies, a timeline, and realistic KPIs associated with it. And then for our final goal, which is enduring partnerships, we would like to establish quarterly meetings with Joint Base Lewis McChord, develop transition pathways for service members that are coming off active duty and they need assistance. We're there for them. And then lastly, recruit active duty and military families to support our volunteer program, which some of that already happens currently anyways, but it's just another goal to continually strive towards getting better at. Pending any feedback or questions, that is our plan on how we're going to get there. So the proposed city council message, this is just a snapshot of what's in the proposed message from you. But the theme of it is that no veteran, active duty service member, or family member should have to navigate the systems on their own. That's kind of the theme of what's in the message. So truly appreciate any feedback you can provide on that message so we can craft it appropriately. Pending any questions or feedback currently, we'll move on to the, I believe is the final actual slide. So our intent for tonight was to get council feedback so we can go and conduct staff refinement and take your suggestions and your feedback and come back at a future time for council adoption and bring you the final strategic plan. So pending any current questions of me for that, that completes my portion of it. I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to present both the operations update as well as the strategic plan. I stand by for feedback and questions.
Anything from the council?
Well, as, I guess, the most senior council member who's president, unless Lenny's online, I just want to say that change that you have brought is really impressive for the relatively short amount of time that you have been there. I mean, before, I think we were more concerned about getting the building and getting agencies to work with us and creating relationships and that sort of thing, and you have brought things to a whole new level. So thank you so much, and I mean it from here. It's very impressive.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments.
We know where you started. We know what you inherited and what it looked like at the time that you transitioned into this role, and you've really knocked it out of the park from what we can see, and all your numbers are up, which is great, and I appreciate you expanding the programs and the facility as well. I like your approach to the expansion, which is a better communication and relationship with JBLM and increasing the volunteer pool so that we can help more people. And so I was thinking about it because when I looked at your SWAT and I saw that, it reminded, because last night I was in Joint Animal, and we were talking about more volunteers as well, and elevating some the existing volunteers and giving them more specific training so that we could bring in more volunteers with a little more general knowledge. And it sounds like that's maybe the path that you're on as well. And I was thinking, where would we get these volunteers, right? Like, and then I thought about all the people in the senior centers locally with a little more time on their hands than active duty people or full-time employees like ourselves, and thought, I think of places like Panorama, I think of places like the Reserve, right, where we have the senior community who is wanting and willing to help, but maybe we haven't reached out to them yet, and they don't know that there's opportunities to help available. And so those are just a couple of thoughts that I had while I looked at your SWOT and looked at your presentation yesterday. So if that helps, right? But as a council, I think we'll probably be weighing in and reaching out to you a little bit more as ideas develop, and as we kind of come to a realization of, things that might be helpful to you and your team and your staff and what you guys are doing over there. So, again, a very heartfelt thank you for all the work that you've done. You've taken on a lot of responsibility, and you've really transformed the way things are happening over there. And we know what you inherited and what you've built is really great. So thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, thank you, Brian, and we will move on to our next agenda item. It looks like we are going to take a look at the solid waste franchise updates. Looks like we have Assistant City Manager, our Special Projects Administrator, and Been There Consulting. Hi.
Good evening. Council members, Deputy Mayor, it's good to be back here again with you tonight. I'm Chanel Pierce, the City's Special Projects Administrator. With me tonight is Shannon Kelly Fong and Jeanette Jurgensen of Been There Consulting, who specializes in solid waste contracting. Tonight's briefing will be an update on the solid waste franchise options and build out on our presentation from May 26. We previously discussed the city's interest in implementing a franchise fee in addition to the existing utility tax. However, we've since learned that the city's current solid waste collection arrangement, regulated by the Washington State Utilities and Transportation Commission, makes it ineligible for solid waste fees other than a utility tax. As is, the city cannot have a franchise fee. We also learned that to establish a franchise fee, the city would need to first negotiate an interim UTC transition franchise agreement with the current hauler, LeMay. Under this franchise agreement, a city can take over the rights but must continue to use the local UTC services and rates. After 7 to 10 years, under a UTC transition franchise agreement, a city may enter into a contract with a private hauler. Based on this information, the council agreed at the May 26 work session that staff would contact LeMay to discuss options and then report their findings back to the city council, which is why we're here tonight. I'll guide you through this matrix we built to illustrate what we learned. Starting from the top row, which captures the benefits, those benefits include whether an option generates additional revenue for the city's general fund, whether the city would receive solid waste collection services at no cost to the city for city-owned facilities, whether UTC continues to manage the administrative duties and bear the administrative burden, whether Lacey ratepayers maintain their current rates, and whether the city positions itself to contract for services in the future in an estimated 7 to 10 years. One option, as always, is to keep things as is with no changes. The advantage is that Lacey ratepayers maintain their current rates, and by that I mean they're going to go up to the things that were mentioned in the public comment earlier. That's out of our control, but meaning we're not taking an action as a city that's doing something ourselves to raise those rates also. So one advantage is they maintain things as is there with the rates. The UTC would continue to bear the administrative burden. However, continuing as is also means no additional revenue for the city's general fund. There's no opportunity for solid waste collection services at no cost for city-owned facilities, and there's no option to negotiate a contract in the future. Another option is to enter into a UTC transition franchise agreement. If we pursue this route without a franchise fee, it wouldn't generate additional revenue for the general fund. However, it might be possible for city-owned facilities to receive solid waste collection services at no cost. We ran the initial calculations with finance and estimate the service costs about $100,000 a year. We mark the yes option with an asterisk in a lighter shade of green cell to indicate it's not guaranteed but a possibility. Similar UTC franchise agreements in Washington State do include this benefit. On the downside, the city would assume the administrative responsibilities for reporting and contract oversight, and we would hope that Lacey residents' rates would stay the same. There's a possibility they might go up. We'll revisit this in a few slides when we examine the UTC rate-making process more closely. This option also does, though, set the stage for the city to negotiate its own contract in the future. A third option is entering into a UTC transition franchise agreement with the franchise fee. This would generate additional revenue. It might also mean that city-owned facilities receive solid waste collection services at no cost, and the city could negotiate its own contract in the future. On the downside, Lacey residents would end up paying more for services, and the city would take on the administrative work. And then lastly, the current solid waste utility tax can be adjusted at any time to generate more revenue. There are a couple ways to do this. You could raise the percentage rate, and/or you could change the city code so that the utility tax applies to more than just garbage. Right now, it applies only to garbage. For example, it could also cover recycling and yard waste and construction or demolition waste. Some disadvantages are that Lacey ratepayers will pay more for services. Also, this option has no effect on the city's ability to negotiate its own contract in the future unless you combine it with one of the other options above. It's wrong way. So as you can see from the matrix, there's many advantages and disadvantages to consider. During the May 26 work session, several council members expressed a desire to avoid increasing rates for residents. As shown in the matrix, the only guaranteed way to prevent any increase, meaning by an action taken here, is to keep everything unchanged and continue as is. However, switching to a UTC transition franchise agreement might also avoid rate hikes. We'll revisit this in a few slides when we examine the UTC rate-making process more closely. For a moment, let's take a look at franchise fees and utility taxes. While they share many similarities, there are also differences. One thing to note is that a solid waste utility tax payments go straight through LeMay to the city, while franchise fee is built into the rates and taxed. Because of the taxes, customers end up paying more for the franchise fee than the city ultimately receives. Since the franchise fee is linked to the franchise agreement, it only affects LeMay. On the other hand, the utility tax will be applied to all haulers operating in the city, including LeMay, and most of those haulers are LeMay, but there are others, so it expands to all. The franchise fee typically covers all services listed in the franchise agreement, such as recycling and organics, but usually it doesn't include drop box disposal. Those are those big boxes, metal containers you can rent for home cleanouts or doing extensive yard waste or renovations. Utility tax covers only the services listed in the code, and again, right now that means garbage collection only. You could change that code so it applies more than just garbage, like I mentioned a couple slides ago. A concern LeMay raised was the uncertainty surrounding the Washington Recycling Reform Act. As little is known about it at this time, and although little is known, here's what we do know. The Recycling Reform Act requires producers to manage the end of life of their products. It shifts the financial and management burden of recycling from taxpayers and local governments to the companies that produce and sell consumer packaging and paper. This includes items such as boxes, cartons, cans, bottles, and jars. These producers must join and fund not-for-profit organizations that run the recycling system. Beginning in 2030, these producer-owned organizations will reimburse local waste providers for most of their costs related to residential recycling, collection, and processing. The Washington State Department of Ecology oversees the program. The key benefits include that by transferring recycling costs to manufacturers, households may see their recycling bills decrease by as much as 90% by 2032. Curbside recycling will be expanded to about 500,000 additional homes across the state, mainly in rural areas and multifamily complexes. The law creates a single standardized statewide list specifying exactly what can and cannot go into the recycling bin. And the program has strict guidelines to ensure that materials are collected are in fact recycled into new products rather than ending up in the landfill. We're filling you in on this because LeMay raised concerns about the uncertainty of the rates over the next several years. There's no action the city needs to take regarding the act itself, but rather just to be aware of the unknown impact of rates.
You turned your,
I remember discussing this on SWAC, so it does say lower the bills on the end, but that's still gonna get tied into the costs of, so it's gonna get passed along somehow. I've always tried to clarify that it's not a free pass for savings.
Good for you. Thanks for pointing that out. Under UTC's jurisdiction, as we talked about, LeMay currently provides solid waste services to Lacey residents at UTC rates. A UTC transition franchise agreement typically matches UTC service levels and rate structure. So when UTC rates go up, residents' rates will rise under this agreement. One thing to keep in mind is that removing Lacey's large customer base could spread overhead costs over fewer customers, possibly leading to higher rates. Without these customers, services would be provided to a smaller, more geographically dispersed customer base, making collection routes longer and less efficient. But to fully understand the impact, we need to wait until the UTC completes its rate-making process, which would occur after the franchise process is complete.
How long a time period are we talking about
For the rate-making process,
to be completed?
would you want to speak to that, Jeanette?
Yeah, sorry, absolutely.
Good evening, Council. Haulers may submit a rate package to the UTC at any time. Generally, it's every 2 to 3 years when they have significant rises in costs due to fuel, tipping fees, and other things. So we don't have a specific timeline for this, but the UTC says basically anytime you have a major change, you can submit. Thank you.
Do you mind if I pass on, Jeanette? Thank you. Thanks, appreciate it. We'll just pass on the mic back and forth over here. I do just want to highlight too that with this, we could have applied an asterisk here as well, that, this is all just kind of broad strokes. We're just trying to provide some background information on possibilities in the future, and that this is really just for background information and things that, should the council want us to explore, the topic more in detail, that there would be more conversation, especially, with LeMay. I know we've met, like Chanel mentioned, with Tom and Austin before, and I know we've talked to Michael as well, and that those conversations would be, continuing on in this process, provided, what direction the council may be looking for some additional information. So we're really here tonight just to report back on our initial conversation and some of the broad information that we received based off of doing some more diligence and also just starting that conversation.
Can I ask one more
Yeah,
quick
go.
question? Olympia has been doing its own recycling and trash collection, and my understanding is they are moving away from that and will be obviously negotiating for private service for that. Is there any potential opportunity here for Lacey or, to join forces with Olympia that might help leverage for either one of us? I know it's pretty abstract at this point, and I don't expect a solid answer, but
I'll start, and then maybe Jeanette or Chanel, if you want to just answer that. I think, we absolutely want to just learn a little bit more information about that, and that would also just be kind of an additional diligence that would need to be had before we can
Right.
provide any type of answer to the question. Jeanette, anything you'd want to add to that?
Thank you. Sorry. I'd just like to clarify that because Olympia is coming from a municipal collection rather than UTC regulations, they have a slightly different setup where they can go directly into a contract.
Right.
And they can negotiate different services and rates. So that's absolutely something that the city could talk with them about, but it is two quite different elements.
okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. As we were talking about like ratepayers maintaining current rates, I recall from our previous conversation about some of the franchise agreements being able to have exemptions or at least to offer lower rates to low income or seniors for those housing, for those rates. And we're also seeing at SWAC some comments about how their rates and they're struggling to pay some of those bills. Are we still looking at trying to get some of those aspects built into a franchise agreement to make sure, like, is that something's common or is that kind of rare?
You want to speak on that, Jeanette?
move it first. Excellent question. Generally, the franchise transitions match the UTC directly. However, working with a hauler, you can negotiate specific things. Everything comes with a cost. So if you are lowering bills for low-income, whichever category you want, low-income senior, low-income disabled residents, low-income veterans, there has to be a cost to make the hauler whole. So everybody else's rates would go up. We don't have the information on what that would look like, but as we move along the process, if that is something that council is interested in exploring, that's absolutely something that staff can talk with the hauler about.
I imagine it probably happens somewhere. I mean, the assessor's office does it for, discounted property taxes and spread it over the rest of the assessed values. So if that information does exist, it's probably out there somewhere, yeah.
There are a variety of different programs that jurisdictions have, and LeMay has examples from other cities regionally too that you can look at. So, but I think the underlying thing is absolutely can be explored. Just know that there is going to be a cost to that.
Okay.
And more information can come back.
Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up on that one is, if we were to move from into a franchise agreement where that's a thing that's happening, is that administrative work that would be happening on the city side, or is that happening with the hauler, like to follow through and to check up on those things? Or is that determined by the agreement?
Exactly, thank you.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It all depends on what criteria you use, what the metric is, and who's monitoring that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So thank you guys for your report, and, we asked you guys to do the homework you did, and of course, our goal is to, bring down costs for the residents of the city. So that is our pure goal, and it's what we are trying to do. I know it's tough out there. It's not just lost jobs and higher taxes and so on and so forth. There's taxes we could be implementing, we're not. And we are just trying to, save our residents some money. It's already an expensive place to live, we know that. We have housing needs, we know that. But this is an area that we might be able to shave off some costs for our residents. So this is just kind of a step forward at this point, and kind of like Shannon said, a broad look at things. We appreciate you guys digging in, having the meetings, doing the things that bring back the information that we can make decisions on. So thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Okay, next on our agenda is our state legislative priorities. Brian. Hi, Brian. Good, how are you? Good too.
So, she's cool in the hot seat.
Okay, so green means on. All right. Good evening. I am Brian Enslow. Let's see, I think I spoke to you as recently as May, so only have a few updates to kind of provide for you, and we'll get into those right away. And with me, joining me on this presentation is, of course, Shannon Kelly Fong. So she, if you ask the tough questions, I'm just gonna look over at her, and she's gonna jump in and
Kick it back to Brian.
she's my perennial phone friend. Anyhow, just quickly on some outlooks, and a lot of this information you probably all already know, but I just want to make sure we're doing some level setting. But both things are true. So in some ways, the Washington economy is continuing to grow. Gross domestic product is going up, at a 4.5% annual growth rate. But our revenue forecast still projects shortfalls and slower job growth and things of this nature. So this continued kind of tension between steady but slow revenue growth compared to the high increases in the costs associated with providing government services. So it's it's not a recession, it's not the things of that nature, but there's this continued significant budget pressure. So OFEM's released their, budget instructions to their agencies, and they say, hey, we're going to do some cuts. Last week, there was a series of kind of conflicting messages from the governor's office versus the legislature, and the governor's office is like, hey, we're going to do what we can to protect the most vulnerable individuals, but we're not going to raise taxes. And then the majority leader, the budget writer in the Senate was like, maybe. We'll see what we can do. So there's still going to be, this is going to be now our third biennium of some pretty tight budgets at the state level, which does kind of cascade down to us in many different ways. Did we learn anything from the primaries? I don't know. I think everyone's probably got an opinion. I believe your opinions are probably more valid than mine on this one. I think there had been some conversations about maybe some new leadership in the House. On the Democrat side, I think based on maybe what we might see in November, I think it's fair to reason that the speaker's position might be a little bit more solid, and it might be maybe the Republican side that maybe looks more at leadership changes. So elections bring changes, and so I wouldn't be surprised there. As you all know, the millionaire's tax is on the ballot for November. There are in what I would consider dueling legal challenges. There's a legal challenge about the constitutionality and way in which the revenue is structured. And for those of you who have been watching state initiative politics for the last decade plus, I could envision a scenario where the legality of the ballot measure is challenged if the ballot measure were to be upheld and if the millionaire's tax were to be repealed. It wouldn't surprise me if some folks decided to have the courts take a look at the ballot title itself. It's got a lot of stuff in it. Looks a little bit ripe to me for a challenge if it were to pass. So, and just a reminder, ever since, destination-based sales tax, streamlined sales tax, you can't just waive the state portion of sales tax. You have to waive both the state and local. So in the way the millionaire's tax was constructed, it does provide sales tax relief on assortment of goods, which then, of course, would impact or will impact the city of Lacey's sales tax revenues as well. And those are primarily on hygiene products, deodorant, shampoo, things of that nature. So. And it's not an insignificant amount when you combine it with kind of the re-racking of, I'm going to say something wonky, and I apologize, it's 5814. It was just the way it comes out of my brain, but it was the changes that the legislature had made like two sessions ago on services of sales tax, and they revisited that last year. The main impacted party was like school districts. Like we didn't want to actually tax school districts for live presentations, but your amazing staff adequately built some projections and some assumptions on those, and I think we collected 1 quarter revenue. Is that true? And okay, I'm not trying to put anyone on the but the long and short of it is when you combine the impact of the millionaire's tax plus the re-racking of what some assumptions were, it is a significant impact to the city's financial outlook. Returning policy, the public defender caseload standard issue is not getting any better. To be fair, public defense advocates are arguing for increased state funding. We know it's essential. I don't expect, there were some articles out of the Clark County region that I don't expect you to be aware of, but the long and short of it is the city of Vancouver had budget for public defenders, but they actually couldn't find anyone like a sufficient amount of staff. So when you think about every city statewide is supposed to increase the number of public defenders to meet these new standards, one, you don't necessarily have the money to do that, and two, there might not be the bodies available. And I think that's what we're finding. Liability continues to be an increasing concern. You're seeing a lot of a lot of verdicts coming out of road design, public safety, things of that nature. Quite frankly, some of the work that local government does is inherently dangerous. You're dealing with unpredictable individuals and populations at times. But we do it because it's important and no one else would. The state itself is looking at record payouts, and they're looking at a significant liability associated with, quite frankly, like Children and Family Services and the Juvenile Rehabilitation Administration and cases that are old, quite frankly.
A quick question,
So,
on the public defender caseload reform situation, let's just say, you know, for all intents and purposes, the cities that have to do this, which is basically all cities, I guess, and, you know, we look at it and we kind of determine, okay, you know, every public defender is carrying 100 cases, we have to get that down to 20 cases. That means that we need 4 more bodies to fill in those gaps, right? What if the bodies just don't exist by the deadline? Would it be your, what advice would you give cities about how to go and I guess revisit this with legislation, with legislators? Like if there's just not enough bodies, either in firms or law school or wherever we look for bodies, and now the entire state is coming up short on public defenders and or attorneys who can handle these cases. How does that look to you?
did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and I think, you know, Brian just mentioned the article coming out of Clark County, and that is what they are dealing with, the scenario that you just described of trying to find additional folks. And that is one of the things that we've tried to highlight to the legislators, that this is a critical need, that, you know, it's not just, you know, bringing on more people for the cases, but it's actually having those resources, those staff members to do that duty. I think ultimately, you know, to answer your question, it would have a significant impact on our justice system. And so that's certainly something that we're trying to flag and try to find, you know, resources so that we can find a solution for that.
Yeah, so your question isn't a hypothetical, right? It's being experienced in real time with, you know, with another jurisdiction. And I think one of the like lessons learned is probably having a game plan and a playbook in place before that happens, and a conversation between you know, your police staff, your court staff, and things of that nature. Because what occurred it was Vancouver specifically, was cases were being dismissed because of inadequate counsel, because they couldn't hire anyone, so they couldn't assign a public defender, and they were being dismissed. But there wasn't a conversation about how we could or could not kind of prioritize cases within either the court system in the way in which they were assigning them, or from an enforcement standpoint. So having a conversation with your justice community in advance to kind of have an understanding of how you're going to work through that if it happens, I think would be useful. You know, I don't think there's any other surprises on this list. I think affordability is something that still hasn't come up from a legislative perspective, but it's bubbling on the surface there. What that could look like, I think there's kind of a handful of ways. I think, you know, historically it's been kind of addressed through utility rate programs for low-income folks or things like that, but I think there's a general sentiment around affordability that's asking for larger solutions than just what's been contemplated so far. And then just to remind you, you know, as a staff team, we're going to continue to work on how to be more effective in these kind of what are you know, very, you know, when there's no money, there's a lot of challenges. The policy is getting difficult, and just really working on narrowing our focus both within the association and with the city itself. This conversation, the May conversation, those things were part of continuing to get engagement earlier. And then really something, we are going to continue to look to you. You are the the strength of the political power of the city. You have your own unique and very valuable and effective relationships, and we need to continue to really maximize those as we're working with your legislative delegation and community. So, and then I say synergy with the state, and I just can link that with the liability piece, to the extent that the state is going to have to really have some hard questions about how they manage state liability. How do we get into that conversation, and how do we, work our way into the solutions that they craft for themselves? And that's just one example, but I think there'll be more examples as the budgets get very tight and they look at ways in which to perform government services more efficiently. Can we be tied into those policy changes as well? Shannon, your turn.
Yeah, so just going, back to the previous. Agenda setting and engagement, we really wanted to get back in front of you with some kind of broad concepts, with the idea that we would return to the council sometime this fall for final approval. So really just gather some feedback from you all, make sure we're still trending in the right direction. One of the things. Oh, I apologize. So just to recapture briefly what I just said, we're here tonight because one of the things we heard from council was to come back and start on the agenda earlier, often, and check in on this. And the idea would be tonight that we're providing kind of some broad themes, making sure that we're headed in the right direction, and that we will be back in front of council later this year to really fine tune and finalize our state priorities moving forward. One of the things that we did talk about at that May meeting was really kind of paring down our longer list of items that we had from the 2026 agenda, and also kind of taking a look at some of the things that we've made some significant progress on. And so the three things that the council talked about really highlighting with the 2027 legislative priorities was focusing on our Thurston County Regional Basic Law Enforcement Academy at the Lacey Regional Training Center. Continuing to focus on extending the annexation sales and use tax credit. And then finally, trying to find a way to authorize a sustainable animal control and sheltering funding mechanism. So in your draft tonight of legislative priorities, those three items exist. We've also added an additional fourth item, which is the Huntermer Park Civic Improvement Project, which we'll get into a little bit more detail here in just a second. But just really quickly to highlight what we have in the draft. With the Thurston County Regional Training Academy, the ask is $2 million be set aside annually for CJTC to operate a regional BLIA at the Lacey training facility. We do have some updated pictures, and I believe we have one of our first training sessions that actually occurred, not a BLIA, but the facility is in use, and you can see that picture right there. And I see Chief reaching for his microphone, so I'm not sure if he has any additions he wants to add there.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, we were able to get some special dispensation, even though we don't have final completion yet for the entire project, but we were able to use the training center of the classroom and hosted a 2-day class for about 30 students from throughout the state for basic law enforcement safety classes.
Nice.
For the second item, again, continuing to work with our legislators on finding a way to create that animal control and sheltering mechanism, really to help us support joint animal services and looking towards the facility needs at animal services, and then also potentially operational needs. In the interim, we've been reaching out to different entities to kind of see where they are at and see if we can do some coalition building on this topic, and continuing to look at, what could be some options and alternatives to move that forward. For the third item is the annexation sales tax credit, and asking that this be extended into 2038. As we mentioned during May 5th, and I don't think there has been any updates since then, we haven't found any jurisdictions that have used this tool, so highlighting and bringing that to the attention of our legislators of the potential, because these things do take time, that extension would be a helpful tool for jurisdictions considering annexations.
So does that mean other cities are also asking for an extension as part of their legislative agenda?
Yeah, we are trying to figure out, who are our partners, whether it is cities or counties, and seeing who we might be able to partner with in bringing that forward.
Yeah, I can confidently say there are both Snohomish County and then cities within Snohomish County are very interested in continuing on working this, and also Clark County and then cities within Clark County. I don't think that's the extent of what I believe the coalition will be once the session rolls around, but I've had direct conversations with those particular regions as well.
That's good to know.
Yeah, a little bit of conversation from Spokane and Spokane County cities as well as Pierce County as well, but so large population bases and large political bases as well.
Brian? And then the final thing, like I mentioned, the newer ask is for some funding for the transformation of Hunnemer Park into the kind of future Hunnemer Park that we've been working on with our Community Economic Development Department, also our Parks, Culture, and Recreation Department. And as you all are aware, we did take a ask to our federal delegation as well. And I know we're going to hear a little bit more about that here in just a second from David Hodges as we look towards our federal agenda. So this would be something that would be building off of the work that is done there to make this project come to fruition, which would be, replacing, the sidewalks, adding, new public infrastructure, taking a look at other, park amenities to really bring people to that area.
Can I take us back just one? Sure. And only because I'm nervous about it, right? And we're coming up on the time where we really have to get the extension for the tax credit. And I'm only nervous about it because, we've talked to the county and they are kind of in agreement with us. Well, things are being talked about, and I just don't want us to run out of time to get the extension done. And so I'm kind of wondering what is the groundswell kind of like in this ask, and I've called and talked to representatives. I just don't know, if we'll be able. Are we going to make it?
I'll let Brian take the first response, and maybe I'll add some commentary.
It's a great question, Deputy Mayor, because, and if I just go back to like, at the end of the day, what we're asking for is some state resources. And this is a pretty bad time to ask for state money. So that's a challenge. Now, on the flip side, the piece of legislation that was put in that created this, House Bill 1425, nobody's used it so far. People have come close. There's been a lot of conversation. So like it hasn't cost the state any money. So what is Brian saying? It's like, well, to get an extension, history would say that it's probably not a lot of dollars we're talking about. I think a likely outcome would not be our ask, but some time period and like contingent on an agreement being in place by a certain time. So say they give us another year and a half or something, and provided you could produce an actual agreement, like you wouldn't necessarily have to have moved forward with the annexation, but actually like a signed and agreed upon annexation agreement, something like that. I could see something like that being where we're at the end of the session. And whether we think that's a good enough deal or not, we'd have to, have a conversation. But that's an outcome I could see.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so again, we are here tonight just to gather feedback from the city council, see if there's anything that we're missing or things that we should be discussing. We've learned a little bit more about the upcoming session, and we'll return, at a later date to provide even more information on that as we get additional clarity. And then we're going to continue in the meantime to work on the 2027 agenda as well as the manual. The manual draft was also included in your packet, and you won't see any significant changes at this point in time. It just includes the elements that we talked about tonight, but staff are going to continue to do a environmental scan of the things that they're hearing, and we'll take a look at making updates as we move closer to the session. And then, like I mentioned, the idea would be that we'd come back sometime in the fall, likely November timeframe, for potential consideration of adoption. With that, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions and get some feedback, any additional feedback from the council.
Yeah.
Going back a bit to the public defender's discussion we were having earlier, have we reached out to, say, the Washington State Office of Public Defense or to see if they're tracking any bills or anything that would help increase funding or, I guess, the amount of people to do public defense in this state? Like, are we working with other jurisdictions with that?
100%. OPD, Office of Civil Legal Aid, the Bar Association, the defender, yeah. So it's been a broad conversation, and the courts themselves as well. How do we bring in the community colleges and the colleges, right? Because there's already loan forgiveness associated with it, but how do we get more individuals on those degree tracks and interested in that area? Those are some of the places, to your earlier question, like what can be done to help create the workforce that doesn't exist? I think that's a big part of the question. And then at the end of the day, there is a lot that revolves around funding. And how is it adequately funded by the state, and how is it funded at a level that it is an attractive profession?
We'll just add on to what Brian just said. In addition, to that engagement, we're also engaging, with the Association of Washington Cities on this topic. And so we do know a lot of jurisdictions, most, if not all of them, this is a high priority item to
Counties as well.
Counties as well.
So as I was reading through the manual, I wanted to pull my hair out when it started talking about unfunded, unsustainable mandates. And I think the language is pretty clear about saying, cities need flexibility, no one size fits all. But I'm wondering if you have a suggestion on how to make that message resonate a little bit better. Apparently, it's not working. There's something, I don't know if it's the language or what it is, but it just makes me want to pull my hair out.
No, I think in particular the dynamic around the housing conversation, I think we have done a poor job of kind of controlling that narrative. And for a while, it was, a coalition of like builders and like housing advocates kind of pointing the finger at what I would say some cities that weren't as forward-thinking as Lacey, right? And in some ways, I would say that that me and some of my brethren like me were complicit, and like we were kind of like, that's great that the legislature is encouraging some other cities to like step up to what Lacey's already doing, whether it's our ADA program, whether it's the infill allowances, things like that. But kind of lost control of it, right? And we saw that reflected in kind of heavy-handedness around like commercial requirements and impacting our ability to incent low-income housing and things like that. And I think piece of legislation that's being talked about coming up around like inclusionary zoning is an example of more of the same. And I think we've kind of identified that and reacted. And I think one of the things is the actions of the state have actually pulled cities across the political spectrum together a little bit, whereas we had been being pulled apart. And I think that one of the things is I think cities and counties are working in concert in a way where we haven't been the last couple bienniums, because some of these issues have pulled us together to support what we're seeing as some significant challenges from the state and kind of this unrecognition of how best it ought to be done at the local level.
I don't have any changes or suggestions about what, our direction and what we've already agreed on that we want to do. I did have a question about, because last time we talked about the authorized animal control and sheltering funding mechanism, we talked about the potential of excise tax, I believe it was. And we also talked about, maybe 13 cents per thousand property tax. And We kind of threw around a few different options. Have we begun to narrow down which options would actually work for that district?
So we've been getting, stakeholder feedback, on that topic, and we're hoping to work with the bill's sponsor here shortly to determine kind of what kind of course they may want to take moving forward. And so both of those options are still things that we are exploring.
Okay.
When we're talking about funding mechanisms for joint animal services, does that money come to Lacey or does it go to some regional pot?
And that's part of the question that we're trying to determine right now. And so the deputy mayor just brought up two of the tools that we've taken a look at before, one being more of a localized pot, right, where it would go to a jurisdiction specifically, potentially. Again, it all comes down to how it's designed, and that was the excise tax that the deputy mayor just mentioned. The second one with potentially something tied to a property tax, it could be both potentially, and both of them could. So I think ultimately the best way to answer the question is it depends on how it's structured. And so just to give you an example, to explain the property tax one in a little bit more detail, it could be modeled very similar to like a metropolitan park district, which could be one jurisdiction, it could be, multiple jurisdictions that would be collecting those tax revenues to be used for a specific service like animal services.
But Lacey is the fiduciary for animal services, even if those dollars are collected by each individual jurisdiction. Anybody else? Well, thank you, guys. Very informative. Look forward to your next one.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, next item on our agenda is our federal legislative priorities, and David Hodges. Thanks for coming to see us, David. Don't have to fly to DC for this.
You stand up and move around.
Hi there, David Hodges with CFM Advocates. Good to see you again. I know I have a couple of new faces here. I think the last time I was here was December of last year, talking about kind of the craziness back in DC. But wanted to get here and give you a quick update and talk a little bit about the agenda that we've been working on for you all. How do I guess, there we go. All right, got it. One that says move forward. So just as an introduction, I know there's a couple of new faces on council. So again, my name is David Hodges with CFM Advocates. I have worked for the firm since 2019, but we have actually represented you since 2007. So me and my colleague Joel Rubin, who's come in here a few times too, has managed your account for us since 2007. And then my colleague Naseem Mehihar also works on your account, and I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to meet him in the future too. I am the rare lobbyist that is actually based in Washington State, so I live in Vancouver, south of here, not north, just to be clear. Just unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, have to travel back to DC about once a month. So spend quite a bit of time there, but also try to stay connected to the state. So just to move along here, I thought it would be helpful to give a primer on the federal appropriations process. We talk a lot about it. We spend a lot of time in that for your priorities. When I say process, I say it with air quotes because it's not a super clear process. A lot of what Congress does is not a super clear process. But I just thought it might be helpful to just kind of run through that really quick. So when we talk about the federal appropriations bills, it's actually 12 individual bills that cover $1.7 trillion in annual discretionary funding the federal government spends. This is separate from the roughly $5.5 trillion in mandatory spending. So those are huge numbers, obviously, but when we're talking appropriations bills, it's just the discretionary spending and that $1.7 trillion. Within those 12 appropriations bills, what we advocate for the city is overall funding levels for particular programs that are important to you, but more specifically, congressionally directed spending or community project funding, AKA earmarks, which took a little bit of a hiatus and have been back for the last 5 or 6 fiscal years. And, you know, all of those earmarks that we advocate for you come through those 12 appropriations bills. So in addition to the, you know, there's a House and Senate version of that, so Congress has to move, you know, their versions of the appropriations bills on either side of the Capitol. Most of the time, once that happens, we get to what's called an omnibus. So they group the bills together, so then it becomes one bill. So you might hear me say, well, the omnibus passed, or sometimes we call it a minibus if it's not all 12 appropriations bills. So just some jargon that I catch myself using occasionally, and I think it's just good to give you, you know, a little bit of a primer on that. Now, what happens when Congress doesn't pass an omnibus or their 12 appropriations bills before the fiscal year starts on October 1st of every year? They utilize a continuing resolution, it's called, which basically it basically extends the current fiscal year so the government doesn't shut down. Now, you would think that that doesn't happen too often, but the last time Congress actually passed an appropriations bill on time was clear back to fiscal year 1997. So we have relied on continuing resolutions. You know, it's funny, in every Congress, they all bipartisan say they're going to do it. This is going to be the year that they're going to get it done. Unfortunately, that rarely actually transpires. So, you know, oftentimes when we're here in December, we're talking about continuing resolutions and we have pending earmarks for you that are waiting. Well, those earmarks are usually stuck in the appropriations bills because continuing resolutions do not include earmarks. So again, when we're out here in December, typically when we do an update for you all, you know, we're updating you on the CR and then kind of giving you the lay of the land on where the appropriations bills are. So just a super quick primer on that. Thought it might be useful. But wanted to get into kind of what's going on in DC, which there is no shortage of things going on in DC right now. So, you know, as we look from here to kind of the next Congress, I have it divided out here into, you know, pre-election, post-election, or the lame duck period. So that's the period when, you know, the elections have occurred, but there's still a new Congress hasn't been seated, which creates some interesting dynamics, as you can imagine. And then the 120th Congress, which will kick off on January 3rd of next year. So just starting with the pre-election, obviously the midterms are sucking up a lot of the oxygen in the room right now. You know, don't need to get into it too much, but historically, midterm elections are not super kind to the party that is currently in power. I think that, you know, that is playing out again, that we're seeing this year. I mean, a lot can happen between now and November, but if we're playing the odds, I think, you know, folks like me are expecting the House to at least change control. And the Senate certainly could follow too. So with that, before the election, Congress is currently on their long August recess. So these other items I'm talking about, they have 16 legislative days left before the election to take care of these items. So first and foremost is government funding. Now, it's pretty much been stated that they are not going to meet the deadline again this year for the new fiscal year, October 1st. They're going to need a continuing resolution, and they're going to have to do that before the election, obviously in November. So before they left town, the House and Senate both left town for their August congressional recess. They both passed competing continuing resolutions that fund the government until early December. The dates are a little different, but basically all but assuring that, you know, they're going to have to deal with that when they come back here to make sure the government doesn't shut down before the election. I don't think bipartisan agreement that they don't want that to happen. Surface transportation authorization. So this is every 5 years, Congress has to authorize all of the country's transportation programs. This includes formula dollars, grant funding. The last surface transportation authorization was 5 years ago. That was the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was the largest federal investment in our country's infrastructure since the creation of the highway system. They are not in anywhere close to having a new 5-year extension bill done. The House released their version of it. It did end up passing out of committee there, but the Senate hasn't even started. So again, they're going to have to take that up, or all of the federal transportation programs are going to expire. And then next item there, reconciliation 3.0. So reconciliation is the process that it's a legislative maneuver that allows basically bypassing the Senate filibuster, so not requiring 60 votes. They're typically used in a very partisan manner. Both sides have used it. So Reconciliation 1.0 for this Congress was the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which I'm sure everybody has heard about, H.R. 1. 2.0 was pre-funding of ICE and Customs and Immigration, or ICE, Customs and Border Protection, through fiscal year 29. And now the Republican majorities in the White House have been pushing for Reconciliation 3.0, it's being called, which would include some elements of the Save America Act, which is about voter ID and whatnot, and some of those items, and in addition to defense spending, which has been a huge, generally defense spending through the appropriations process has been a bit of a hot button issue right now because of the activity in Iran. Moving on, and again, that is a long list to do, what I said, 14 legislative days when they come back, so that's going to be exceedingly challenging. And then we start looking at post-election, which, you know, pre-election, a lot of it is just kicking the can down the road to kind of this post-election period. They have to figure out FY27 appropriations, so I mentioned they have a continuing resolution that runs till December. So they're going to have to figure that out, and again, on that, the Senate hasn't really even formally kicked off their process of that. All of their bills have not even, the 12 bills have not even moved out of committee yet. The House is further along, but similarly, none have cleared the floor except for 3 of those 12 bills. And then they're going to have to look at a longer-term surface transportation reauthorization, probably a year long. Like I said, it's they're very far behind on that, and it's hard to imagine that anything's going to come together before the end of this Congress or this year. So look for that to probably be another 1-year extension, a clean extension of the existing reauthorization. Other extenders and must-pass legislation, these are things like the National Defense Authorization Act that has to be passed every year. The Farm Bill is also up, so similar to surface transportation, that covers ag programs, but also things like SNAP benefits. And then new dynamics as we come out of the post-election, you know, did Democrats win the majority in the House? Did they win the majority in the Senate? Does it stay the same? I mean, that's going to really determine, and frankly, how the lame duck session transpires. And then we look at the 120th Congress come January 3rd, and again, the big issue next year is going to be surface transportation reauthorization. Going back to that, they you know, made a historic investment last time. The bill that was released in the House, it was a bipartisan bill, did not go nearly as far as the bipartisan infrastructure law. If Democrats take the majority of in the House, Congressman Rick Larson from Washington is slated to be the chair of the House T&I committee, so would play a heavy role in actually writing that. So that's an interesting dynamic to keep an eye on. Similarly, in the Senate, Senator Cantwell would be the chair again of the Senate Commerce Committee, which plays a heavy hand in surface transportation reauthorization too. So some interesting dynamics potentially playing out there. And then new congressional priorities, you know, sort of going back to that, do the majorities change? Do they stay the same? Is the House Democratic? Is the Senate Democratic? Or, you know, is one Republican? You know, it's fluid right now and dynamic, but either way, I mean, those are, you know, just the kind of big picture of what we're looking at going into the rest of this year, but also next year. Just wanted to throw up some of our recent successes here because, you know, I mentioned we play a lot in, you know, federal appropriations. So since earmarks returned in fiscal year 2022, we have secured 3 earmarks for you, so $500,000 for the Betts Hub, which was for the elevator or the lift, technically. Makerspace expansion, about $1 million for that, and then $850,000 for College Street Phase 3. One item that isn't on here, in fiscal year 25, there was earmark from Congresswoman Strickland for an emergency generator for the police station. If you remember what happened at the end of 2024, President Trump came into office and was reelected, and there was a decision by Congress to just go with a year-long continuing resolution. So all of those earmarks that were in the fiscal year 25 appropriations bill were just jettisoned, just gone, unfortunately. So we're not able to secure that one, which is a bit of a heartbreaker, honestly, because a lot of work goes into applying for those, lobbying for them and whatnot. So that was certainly disappointing. And then some of your federal grants too, we just mentioned here, also $1 million from the EDA for the makerspace, Safe Streets for All planning grant for $68,000. And then you'll see the pending item down there for Huntermore Park, $850,000 for improvements, also from Congresswoman Strickland, which is currently in the FY26 appropriations bill, which, as I was saying, hopefully by the end of this year, we will see passed and you'll get some access to that funding. So I can run, do you want me to run through these, Shannon? Okay, great. So this is the draft federal agenda that we have been working on, again, and want your feedback on these. Huntermore Park is still on there. Ideally, we'll be able to take it off, assuming that an appropriations bill passes. If for some reason, which I don't foresee this happening, but if for some reason there is a continuing resolution again for a year, we would lose that and then we would look to reapply next year. $1 million for the senior center expansion, and this is the phase 3 expansion of the senior center. And then $13 million for College Street Safety Improvement Project, phase 3 of that project. Requesting $13 million for that. We've applied for several years for the Raise/Build program. This is one of the more competitive grant programs that USDOT has. It has about a 10% award rate, so highly competitive. Just this year, we received notification from USDOT that while you were not successful, you were named a project of merit, which is the first time that's happened, and what that means is you are automatically going to be reconsidered next year at the highly recommended level. So good to see that. Obviously would have preferred an award this year, but we'll take that as a consolation prize. And then policy priorities, I've said surface transportation reauthorization a lot tonight. That is going to be a big topic for next year, and we have priorities we want to talk about there. Preserving fair and predictable federal grants framework. So earlier this year, the administration proposed a new rule that would basically provide whatever the administration is, either this one or a future one, increased flexibility to cancel federal grants. And obviously that's caused a lot of alarm bells, especially because we've seen this administration, cancel grants that have already been awarded. They would provide more say from political appointees on federal grants that are awarded. This is something that the National League of Cities has come out strongly against, and we're certainly tracking it. The rule itself has caught the attention of Congress in a bipartisan way. So the Senate continuing resolution that was passed right before they went on recess actually includes a moratorium that they cannot implement this new rule. I would expect something similar to, ideally, and this is what we're working on, we'd like to see it in a fiscal year 27 appropriations bill. Again, just preventing the administration from implementing this rule because there's a lot of, you could be under a grant agreement with them and they could just cancel it, and that would be hugely problematic. Build America, Buy America flexibility. I know there's been a lot of examples here about, those requirements, increasing project cost and being completely inflexible. This is something, again, we've been talking about for several years. It's a bit of a tough one, frankly, just because, on the surface, nobody wants to say don't buy America, but, in practice, it just doesn't quite work out so well. Community development block grant funding, this has become increasingly important. The administration in their appropriations request this year proposed zeroing this out. Congress had something different to say about that, but it's one of those items that, is pretty consistently under threat, at least over the last couple of years. And then, of course, I-5 Nisqually River Delta, that is the next, and I've said this before, that is the next mega project in Washington State after the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project is complete. So, continuing to advocate for that. Today, and I mean really over the last several months, we've been talking about potential additions to these. We had a chance to go out and tour some of these, so College Street and 7th Avenue, adding a roundabout there, potential city hall improvements, septic to sewer, and then potentially Lacey Food Court Plaza work. And again, staff is continuing to vet these, I know, and we're continuing to throw ideas around on this, and, of course, welcome your feedback.
I would just add on to that last section, we're continuing to take a look at what could be some additional possibilities moving forward. And, one of the, the benefits of coming here in August is to kind of go over like, hey, what are some of the things that we know? And to also give us some time to look into some other potential projects. And so we just wanted to provide some of the things that we're going to continue to work with different departments on, searching to see if there is an opportunity to pursue, a funding source. So just wanted to highlight that.
Council?
I had a question about the surface transportation reauthorization as well as the I-5 Nisqually River Delta.
Yeah.
How linked are those two? Like, do you need to have the surface transportation reauthorization done before we can start lobbying for the I-5 Nisqually River Delta projects?
Basically, yes, because that gives us the funding pots that we know we can potentially go after. Now, I think they're maybe a little ways off from that, from being able to pursue federal funds, but regardless, the surface transportation bill, it's a 5-year bill. So, within the next 5 years, we want to know kind of what the playing field is in terms of the federal dollars that we could go out and ask for that.
Well, thank you.
Of the potential additions to federal funding priorities, I like the order that they're in. I see the septic to sewer kind of coming together with our annexation plan as kind of one thing. I mean, I guess, our annexation plan is to take advantage of some state shared dollars but, the sections that we are looking at will need septic to sewer conversion if we can afford it or if it's affordable. So I guess we can keep you posted on how our annexation plan is coming as to whether that needs to move up or down.
Yeah, we talked about that today. I know Shannon ran me around some neighborhoods today that are in need of that, basically, and yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
I was just going to highlight, we stayed in the city, and I think that's just something to bring awareness to it. There are multiple locations within the city that are also in that, and that's something that we're going to be looking with our public works team to identify what are potential projects.
The other thing too, you look at some of the previous site had all the successes, and a lot of those took multiple years to do, and sets the groundwork. And then, as David mentioned on the RAISE grant for College Street, we've made several applications over subsequent years, refined that, got feedback, refined that. Just last year, or last spring, we were back there and getting some feedback from them. So this is the first year we got merit assessed. So there's a lot of legwork that goes in, and so on that future potential list, those are projects we see coming out that we need to start laying that groundwork. So when we do get to that point, we may be in better position to use those funds when it gets closer to be that shovel-ready project. And just kind of works with the efforts that we've been working on, that the federal presence, and working with CFM and David and Joel and Nassim to be able to lay that groundwork year after year, and that familiarity with our delegation.
Yeah, and just very happy with the Project of Merit category for the College Street, because just a lot of work goes into those grant applications. They're 30-page applications. So it's nice not to have to reapply next year, I guess.
And,
they'll be able to
during
take
that time, we also, you can have administration changes and all those other
right.
things that, all of a sudden, the focus is different, and then you got to adjust to that too. So this is a pretty key.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, especially with that program. With each administration, they have kind of different focuses, so it's a lot of, you got to fine tune it and tailor it to whatever administration it is.
Well, thank you so much for the update. Thank you for driving up from Vancouver.
Absolutely. I didn't fly from DC, so that's not too bad.
We didn't have to fly to DC.
Thank you.
Same time zone, right?
Same time zone.
All right, next on our agenda is going to be our council reports. I am up first, and I do have one quick report. JASCOM met yesterday at 5:30 here in these chambers. Field calls are slightly up. County is at 42%, Olympia at 25%, Lacey at 23%, Tumwater at 10%. We did get a presentation about a new low-cost clinic that is headed our way in the Tumwater area. It's good for all the county. Most of the cost of surgeries and spay-neuter products are usually around the $400 to $1,200 range. These will be in around the $100 to $200 to $400 range. So we'll be fortunate to have one. It'll keep our population control down. So we don't have exactly a timeline yet. It's still in permit process with the city of Tumwater, but there was a Tumwater representative there last night. So who knows, we might get something sooner than later, but the timeline is the end of the year for that to open. So hopefully in January we'll have a new clinic here that we've never had before with low cost in Tumwater. Let's see. Best Friends, I told you guys about the Best Friends program, which is an embed program where Best Friends gives us an employee, an FTE for 6 months, and the goal is to raise efficiency. Currently, JASCOM operates at about 83% efficiency in terms of save rate, and so for example, we get about 3,278 is the gross intake. And in order to get us to 90% efficiency, which is where we want to be, it's not really an arbitrary number, but 10%, I guess, is maybe animals that are not safe to go back into the population. And so the goal is to get from 83% to the 90%, and that is why they've embedded and gave us a full-time employee for 6 months till the end of the year. She's very nice, very astute in her work, and has been here for 30 days so far. So we are 1 month in, and at this point, we're kind of looking at best practices, best courses of actions, focusing on, again, boosting the volunteer base. And you guys kind of heard me talking earlier about taking the volunteers that you have, giving them more specialized training that you can bring in more volunteers. And so bringing in more volunteers and having a more specialized volunteer base is kind of the future of how we become more efficient, because in terms of bandwidth with staff, we are maxed out in addition to being maxed out in terms of facilities. Let's see. We did have a budget amendment last night, so there's a $24,000 that's going to be used for equipment. There's going to be make sure I pronounce this right, electrocutory unit, which basically is used to, it cauterizes wounds better, faster, for quicker healing, and so, and some.
Charcuterie?
Yeah. Also, dental equipment, so those two are, and that's a specific pot of money that is already reserved for this purpose. And then we also have an increase in utilities, just like everybody else, just like you're experiencing at home. And that increase is about $33,350 for this facility. So the total budget request that was approved, or budget amendment that was approved, is $53,350. Fortunately, JASCOM reserves are really nice. I can't give you an exact number. The last number I remember is 1.9, but Troy could probably supply us with that. The budget will be coming out for our review. The budget timeline is October 12th, we'll get kind of a pre-budget review. On November 9th, we'll get a second look at it, and then December 14th, we'll vote on it. So all those numbers will come to you guys. The budget amendment is not going to affect the overall budget for next year, with the exception of the $33,350 in utilities that will get built into next year's budget so that we don't come up short on that again. I did tell them about the fact that we asked the city manager to see if PSE would like to come in and just to one of our work sessions and maybe talk about, their rate changes and that kind of stuff. So, let's see, there was one new hire that came on, and there is Sierra is one of the people that she's really kind of helped build the program. She's leaving, but she's really kind of helped build a lot of the programming that is in place now and bring it to its level of efficiency. Some of them were her idea, but her time is going to be short. She'll be gone probably in, I think it was September 9th is her last day. Don't quote me on that, but community events are up, surgeries are up, and the Joint Animal Services is operating at a really good efficiency level. And then I also, in our city inventory, the police station was the worst, absolute worst building that we had. And Joint Animal Services was second, right? And so if you guys haven't been out there, you owe it to yourself to go take a look at the facilities. It is now the #1 worst building in our inventory. So I've asked city manager to add Joint Animal Services and the capital outlay to the 3 cities meeting so that we can talk about it as a group and maybe get some traction going on that. And that is my report. Next, we have Councilmember Cox.
I don't have a meeting report, but the lot board is going to be meeting tomorrow night, and I talked with the director this afternoon, and it looks like they're going to ask for the standard 3% on the rates that get charged. I mean, I don't think anybody seriously considered going up, but they are required by August 31st each year to let us know what rate they're going to be basing their budget on so that we can budget for our own and planning.
Is that a 3% increase?
3%, yeah. It's been a standard, kind of like we do with our water. It's,
Or 1%, kind of annually, 3%.
well, I think, haven't we approved like multi-year at going up 4% and that sort of thing? It's that basic agreement. So given that, things are tight, it's just good to know and be able to predict that, so.
Okay. And, sorry, is it Councilmember Dunning? I'll circle back to you at the end. Councilmember Sue?
Last week, we SWAC met for the first time since June, and so we had kind of a long meeting. So some of the things we talked about were some of the public comments we were getting about seniors having a difficult time paying their bills and having pickups and getting charged extra for some of the services. And so we talked a little bit about that, and that's something I brought up earlier when we were talking about the franchise fees. But we had a nice big presentation from Ecology about the new organics law that is in effect right now, as well as how it's going to affect residents. And some of the reasoning behind the organics law, such as that the most effective way to reduce waste in our current landfill is by filtering out organics, and it's also the most cost-effective way to extend the life of that landfill. And so that's one of the reasons for doing that. And so one of the things that I found out was that by 2030, everyone will have to have also an organics or a yard waste bin in addition to their own trash. And that is not elective. They're going to have it. The people who can opt out are folks who are who already do the self-haul. So people who are already taking their trash and recycling to the dump on their own, and they're not having curbside pickup. And so, in addition to that, found out that we also heard about the Recycling Reform Act. They published their draft today, and it's open for public comment or not today, last week. They published that and it's open for public comment. So that way you can go take a look through and see how that Recycling Reform Act is going to be kind of enacted. And so it's a great place to go in and see how it could affect our solid waste rates in the future. And I think the last thing that we discussed was potentially adding a non-voting member to the board who is one of the union representation. So that way they have a little bit of a say, or at least a voice at the table when it comes to setting policy with solid waste. So,
Is that the end of your report? Is that the end of your report?
yep.
Okay. Councilmember Turner.
Yes, I attended the West African Cultural Event in Huntington Park on Saturday. It was their first event. I hope they do many more. They had some great drummers, and I thought they had a really nice group that came out. I was asked to come up and give some remarks impromptu on behalf of the city, and I was more than happy to do that.
So, thank you for doing that. And Councilmember Dunning.
Promised myself I wouldn't cry. This is kind of fitting that we had the Veteran Service Hub presentation here, because I remember during our retreat, thinking that, with me deciding to run for a different office, that was the last time I might be in the room with the entire staff all together at one time. And it was actually, I don't know about you guys, but I was there kind of struggling with that. It was really heavy on me at the time. But with the primary being over, I've been talking with the mayor and the deputy mayor and the city manager about what's in the best interest of Lacey, and knowing that there's a big difference between a district run and a county run. That's going to take a lot out on me, and it's going to take a toll, and it's going to take a lot of my time. On top of that, I'm dealing with a wedding and getting married now, and then trying to do all the city stuff on top of that. And I really kind of came to the conclusion that wasn't fair to the city for me not to be able to give 100%. Knowing that I might be leaving no matter what, I thought it would be best if you guys had more of a jump start on finding someone to fill that seat who could actually dedicate that time to the city that deserves, because there's a lot of important stuff, especially next year, that I think that person needs as much time as possible to kind of address. So with that being said, next week will be my last meeting, and I wanted to stay on in case we needed to schedule anything for a vote or help transition anyone into different roles. And I hope I'll stop by either later this week or early next week and talk to the staff and say something. But it's definitely a hard day for me. Elections are hard, and it's taking a lot out on me and my family. And I really hope that you guys find someone to replace me and help push the city forward. So that is my report.
That is your report. Thank you for being candid and being real with us about this. Thanks for coming to my office and talking to me about it. So we will have to do some readjusting of council assignments. We'll take a look at that as a group. But I'll hand it off to Rick so he can kind of share with us a little bit more in depth about what we're going to be looking at coming in the future.
So real quick on the council interjurisdictional committee assignments. Right now, Councilmember Dunning serves on the Visitor Convention Bureau, which Deputy Mayor Miller is the alternate. It also serves on the Regional Housing Council, which Councilmember Sue's the alternate. So that'd be those immediate.
Yeah, Lee off.
And
Left one, sorry.
Board. And I don't believe we have an alternate there, but we'll figure that out going forward. In terms of process with Councilman Dunning announcing that he will be stepping down of council after the next council meeting, the council has a process in place for filling vacancies on council that's established in the council's policies and procedures. And then also on state law, the really guiding things from RCW is that the council has 90 days from the point of that vacancy is official to fill that seat. If it doesn't, the council is not able to fill that seat in 90 days, then they would be transferred up to the county commissioners. And if they're not able, at a certain time, it goes up to the request to the governor. So that'll start that clock. And so at the next council meeting next week, we'll have an outline of what the council policy procedures provide for our process, lay out some basic information and get council's direction and feedback to start that process and an application piece. So more to come next week.
Any questions or comments from the council? All right.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us tonight, Nick. I appreciate it, and I understand it, and I wish you well.
I have to say, I also wish you well. I think as a new council member, I have consistently been able to say you've been very generous with yourself. And I appreciated all the support and the good wishes and, allowing me to sometimes second a motion. Because you always beat me to it. But I wish you the best. I wish you the best.
And with that, unless Ryan, you have something?
Yeah, I was going to wait till afterwards, but
Nope.
yeah, I was also going to say thank you so much, Nick, for sharing so much of your heart and soul with this council and for the city. You've been great to learn from and so open with all of your comments and your advice, and so I really do appreciate getting a chance to learn from you. And yeah, elections take a lot out of you. You put your heart and your soul out there for everyone to see, and I hope that being able to step back from this is going to help find some time for you and your family to be able to stay focused on that. And so thank you so much again for your service.
And with that, we have reached the end of our agenda, unless there's anything further. And as always, and I hope we've been an example of this tonight, Lacey, you keep it classy.